All right, so I'm joined today by two injured members of the team. First of all, we have Niall McIntyre in studio. He's hurt physically. His arm is in a sling. How is it, Niall?
I think I'm hurt mentally as well, buddy.
Do you,
No, it's not too bad. Like I got a bit of good news on Friday. I went to Limerick to find out if I had to get surgery or not, and thankfully I don't have to. But I suppose the biggest pain of all with an injury like this is when you're going to miss out on. My club are in a relegation semi-final now, so it's a very important stage of the season, and I'm going to be missing out for that. So it's disappointing in that sense.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. Like, I mean, do you remember the fella hit you, blindsided you? A bit like John Small, maybe, and young McLaughlin, Owen McLaughlin from Mayo. Do you remember this lad's name, and are you going to seek retribution on this blindside hit?
It was very similar to what. Do you remember James McCarthy hitting Nathan Mullins in that Dublin County final? It was hard.
He lined you up.
He lined me up, and I know I just kind of picked up a ball near the sideline, and I hadn't looked inside. Your man came in, kind of nailed me on the shoulder, played on for a few minutes, and made it a bit worse then. So, but sure, look, it comes with the territory.
Another member of the team, another member of the team is not hurt physically, he's hurt mentally, and that is after Mayo blowing an absolutely golden opportunity to win an All-Ireland. Conor Heenan, welcome back to the show.
Thanks very much, Wade. Thanks very much.
How are those scars?
Well, I was about to say, if Niall thinks he's in pain, he's a world away from the hurt that I'm feeling at the moment. I know I'm over Wooly, but probably only just about. I mean, you know, when you lose as many as Mayo have, it's kind of hard to say which one was the toughest. But I think this was definitely up there. Like I'd say, to be honest, that the fallout is probably still ongoing, but it was, you know, the club is kind of coming back is kind of taken away from it a little bit. But there's a lot of hurt, there's a lot of anger kind of floating about. But I think ultimately it's just crushing disappointment. As he said, the opportunity was there and we didn't take it, and who knows when we're going to be back there again, you know?
Yeah, well, that's it. You take a messed up shoulder any day of the week, other than that psychological pain. So 8 in a row for Ballygunner, Niall. Like, I mean, this is a domination. I always find it funny. Like, I mean, you see after the win 8 in a row, you have other people commenting on it. Oh, this is bad for Waterford hurling, a domination. I can see that argument. You know what I mean? It makes sense. It gets boring after a while. And then you have Ballygunner argument where they say, here, lads, it's not our fault. All ye have to come up to our level. Don't blame us because we're really good. And I can kind of see that argument as well. So, like, who's right and who's wrong here?
Yeah, I seen Darragh O'Sullivan, the Ballygunner manager, he was trying to say that, like, it's not a bad thing for Waterford hurling that's raising the standards. And as he said, like, the Waterford team probably are at their highest level in the last long time. Like, so, and like a big part to play in that is what Ballygunner are doing, like, and the amount of players that they have in this county panel. Like, I was just looking at their team yesterday, and Conor Power, he was only brought on as a sub, and a few years ago, like, he was scoring goals all around him, and you're looking at him as a potential player for Waterford, like, but it just shows the strength and depth in Ballygunner, and I suppose the strength and depth in Waterford too.
Yeah, no, they're freakily good. There's no doubt about that. Do you have an opinion on whether a domination, like, there is an argument, like, I mean, they're winning the finals very easily, Conor, but like, they could have been beaten in the semi-final by Mount Sion. I think in the quarter-final they were ran pretty close as well. So, you know, you probably need to know a little bit more about the ins and outs of Waterford hurling to know how bad or good it is for the county.
Yeah, like, I think on the surface, I think just kind of looking back over the results that you mentioned there in finals, I think they've won 8 in a row, and of those 8, I think the closest that anyone got to them was 4 points in 2015. Like, they're not just winning finals; they're absolutely dominating finals and blowing teams away. So, you know, that like, on one hand, that maybe suggests something about the level of competition in Waterford. But as you say, Mount Sion ran them very close in the semi-final as well. I nearly turned that back on you, Wooly, and like, what was the situation like at Laois when Port Laois were dominating all that time? Was it considered bad for the county, or just considered maybe good for the county team that it's such a kind of a team that was so prominent at a provincial and national level as well, that had to be good for Laois as well?
Yeah, well, the same thing. Port Laois said, come up to our level, lads, and everyone else complained about it. See, Port Laois was an awkward one, because Port Laois was almost like a Dublin and Leinster situation, because we had such a much bigger pick than other clubs, and it seemed almost unfair. And the level of interest in Laois football definitely was on the slide. There's no doubt about that. Port Laois were just winning it every year, and, like, I mean, that's not good. And as it turns out, now Port Laois aren't winning them, they're just in the mix. But it's not because the other clubs have come up to Port Laois's level, it's because Port Laois have gone back, you know. So I don't really know what side to come down on the Laois example. It's much more exciting championship in Laois now, but can any Laois team challenge a Dublin team in Leinster? I would say absolutely not. So, like, I mean, it's hard to know. Another thing out of yesterday, Stephen O'Keefe retired. I think he retired in the interview after the game because everyone was expecting him back. He took a year out to go travelling, and it's an interesting one. He's only 30. So he said, I've given it a good 9 or 10 years now, and that chapter is finished for myself. So he's only 30. Philip Mahony's only 30. He's gone 2 years. Barry Coughlin's only 31. He's gone 2 years. All these Ballygunner lads kind of going, I'm going to take a step out. I'm almost guaranteed a county title, a run in the Munster club, and that's my year. Without the hassle of the inter-county, I can still enjoy my hurling year with the club that I'm at. Do you know what I mean?
I suppose it kind of shows how high of a level that Ballygunner are at, like that these lads, they may have retired from Waterford, they're still playing for Ballygunner. And like, I was just watching that Stephen O'Keefe interview. I thought it was just it was a real brilliant, kind of refreshing sort of an interview. Like nobody, as you said, nobody knew he was retired from Waterford, but he was kind of content, just slipped it into the conversation there in TG Carr. No, that's finished now. He kind of just walked off quietly, like, and I thought it was a brilliant interview. But in general, yeah, the Ballygunner lads, like the strength and depth they have, it's unbelievable, Willie.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. They've 8 weeks now to their Munster club. With Pauric Mahony coming up on the show in part 2 to talk to us about that match and a little bit about his last year. Funnily enough, Pauric Mahony hasn't missed a club championship in the last 2 years. After his ACL, he was out for 9 months with his knee, but he missed 2 inter-county seasons, so that's a very kind of unusual situation. In the relegation match in Waterford, De La Salle beat Ballysaggart. Ballysaggart are gone back down. Stephen Bennett scored 1-8. So it would have been a big shock for De La Salle to have gone down there. Talking about relegation matches, Conor, Dr. Crokes versus Killarney Legion in a relegation match. What are the chances of this? So Kenmare Shamrocks beat Dr. Crokes. Sean O'Shea scored 15 points out of 17. I think 13 were from frees, but like, you know, the frees he scored, it could have been from anywhere. Crokes have won 7 of the last 11 titles, obviously Munster titles and an All-Ireland club there as well. And while Killarney Legion were in the 2015 final. So this is a huge relegation match. One of these two clubs is going down to intermediate, which is hard to understand.
Yeah, it's unfathomable, really, for Crokes to be in that situation, given their record in All Ireland club, in the last few years, that we could be looking at them in intermediate. But just kind of digging a bit deeper into the results, I think they were kind of caught in the hop maybe in the first game, and just the way the group is going, they found themselves in the relegation playoff. Whereas Legion, as far as you know, they were well beaten by Kearns Rallies and Austin Stacks, and they lost to Dingle as well. So you'd imagine that Crokes would be favourites to win that match. And plus, the way the Kerry Championship works, they could lose that match and still get to the county final in the other Kerry Championship, which you wouldn't put past Crokes either. So when you add all the elements into the equation, I would be very surprised if Crokes get relegated, because it would just be, considering their status, they're one of the super clubs in Ireland, basically. So to see them in an intermediate so soon after, being at that level would be it just seems unfathomable to me, honest.
Yeah, Spa drew with Temple No. So Spa stay up as a senior team. They obviously avoided the relegation. It was 13-man Temple No. So Spa kind of mess up East Kerry. I saw David Clifford talking about this. Spa have 8 or 9 on the East Kerry panel when they won the county title, and maybe 4 on the team as well. So definitely that's not good news for East Kerry, who are trying to retain the title. But congratulations to Spa for staying up in as a senior team. I was in O'Moore Park last night. Portlaoise beat St. Joseph's. Portlaoise were impressive in the first half. I thought they played very good football, scored 9 points against the defensive-ish St. Joseph's, and then they weren't great in the second half, but did enough to win it. But the big talking point about this was kind of farcical situations, Niall, before the game. So this was a triple header in O'Moore Park. There was a game at 3, 5 and 7, and Portlaoise arrived there, and the teams at 5 had a small bit of space in the stand. I was sitting in the stand, the whole stand in O'Moore Park, it's 5,000 people. It was nearly all, especially when you space people out, it's nearly full. So we used to have a situation when the games were behind closed doors, the whole stand would be free. So all 6 teams could have their own section of the stand, and it wasn't ideal, but it made sense. They had a covered area where they could tug out. Now the stand's full. The 2 teams that were in the 5 o'clock game were using the little small area in the stand that must have been cordoned off for the teams. Portlaoise were out. There was a torrential downpour in Portlaoise at about 5:30, 5:45. I was driving in it. Portlaoise were outside the Centre of Excellence, standing under about a foot of shelter with a physio table there, getting treated and getting together into spills of rain before a game as the Centre of Excellence door is closed with dressing rooms just just behind them. Like, I mean, I keep talking about this. It's not the first time we talked about it. 3 weeks more of this. Complete and utter nonsense.
Yeah, it was the picture of the fella getting the rub, Willie. He was just sitting up, no top on, the physio there. Like, it just kind of hammered home how ridiculous the whole thing is. Like, and like as you said, stands, it's probably not the ideal situation, like when there's people around you in the stand trying to prepare for a championship game, but it's certainly a lot better than getting ready under a gutter in the lashing rain. Like, it was just, your picture, it just kind of summed up, I suppose, the ridiculousness of that 6 people are allowed into the dressing room at a time. Like, that's never really going to work. Like, it's
that's only good for going in, getting your jersey and coming out. The team has to be together, right? So, like, I mean, the situation, Conor, was they weren't allowed even go in and they weren't even allowed go into the dressing rooms in sixes until the game out in the field was over. Even though there's 4 dressing rooms down under the tunnel in Moore Park, plus a gym that could have been used. Just this stuff, it just makes no sense to me. It's getting very frustrating. And the fact that, like, I got into the car this morning, it was 6 degrees, Conor. Like, I mean, we're at winter time now. And, like, I mean, the least the GAA could do here is cut these 3 weeks off and let lads go into a dressing room. And the farcical situation, my last thing to say about this was they weren't allowed to use the dressing rooms, or they weren't allowed to use the showers, even though the GAA have permitted shower use if necessary, or under circumstances where they have to.
What that means, really.
What does that mean? So they weren't allowed to use the dressing rooms. They were sent home in wet, dirty gear. The Portlaoise lads, an awful lot of them, went home, got a shower, headed into town and sat together in a pub. Like, I mean, like, on what planet does this make sense anymore?
Yeah, no, it doesn't. It absolutely doesn't. The fact that that just sums up the fact that all the lads there that were huddled under the gutter, as Niall said, getting wet, and then they're in the pub, a few hours later. It just it makes no sense. Like, I remember, Willie, I came on in a junior game a few weeks ago, and probably similar to yourself yesterday, there was an unmerciful downpour to the extent that where the jersey is like an extension of your skin. It's literally stuck to it. You have to get somebody to nearly help you take it off. It's that wet. And it was fine with me because, like, we were playing in Kaltma, I just literally had to hop in the car and I was up the road. But I was thinking of the players of the other team, and they absolutely got saturated to the skin. They all have to hop in the car and drive home for might be 45 minutes afterwards. And we're talking about looking after people's health as well, and I don't think that's necessarily conducive to being healthy either. So I know, like, this, it just, like, it's not as if the GAA hasn't provided for this already in terms of inter-county teams. There was protocol put in place to allow inter-county teams to use dressing rooms. So I don't know, is it a lack of trust for those at club level, especially when these guidelines will be going out the window in a few weeks, as you said. So it took a situation like yesterday where you have to see a picture like that, just to see how ridiculous the situation is.
Like, I'm surprised more pictures haven't been taken, because that picture of a team in a knockout championship match standing in against the wall as tight as they can to stay dry before they go out and play a championship match. You have to look at the picture to go, holy shit. I'd say people didn't really think. Do you know? I'm sure they thought, because you had Stevie MacDonald talking about Kalevi they're playing next weekend in Eden Dork, and he's in Eden Dork don't even have a stand. Like, we're going to be out in it, but without seeing it. Do you know what I mean? You just think, they'll be grand.
You're nearly getting so used to these sort of crazy things of, like, people getting togged out in the rain that it doesn't even register with you anymore. Like, it's just, the GA just seem to be, like, that's 6, and it's just to be seen to be doing the right thing, like, but it's clearly the wrong thing that they're doing, do you know? Like, because this type of weather, as you said, 6 degrees getting into the car this morning, that's the type of weather you'll get colds and flus, and waiting around for a shower after a game, waiting around in the wet before a game. So that's the worst thing you could possibly do in this weather. Standing
outside for your team talk at halftime. They couldn't even go in. Like, I mean,
that's not championship that's not preparation for a championship game. Do you know, like, thinking of players going out to play a big game and having to stand there in the rain, their gear getting soaked before they even go out, like, that's just...
Yeah, no, it's complete. I've heard anecdotally, Conor, whether you can confirm or deny it, that Mayo clubs are completely disregarding these rules and they're allowing the use of their dressing rooms. Can you confirm or deny this?
I can neither confirm nor deny. Willie, you're trying to get me in trouble there. No, I'll tell you what, Willie, I was at one game. I'll tell you, I was at one game at the weekend and I watched another on Mayo GAA TV. So I didn't see what happened before the games in either game what happened with the dressing room situation. But at halftime in both games, one entire team went into the dressing room at halftime and the other didn't. So I'm not sure why exactly that was. Did the team just decide for themselves that they were going in and that was that? But I'm nearly sure that was the case, not just in Mayo, but probably in clubs all around the country as well, because we're just talking about how ridiculous the situation is. So maybe people have taken the matters into their own hands, and in this case, I don't have that much of an issue with them doing it at all.
No, because it is player welfare at the end of the day. And if a club turned around and said, "Listen, lads, go in there and get a hot shower before you go home," that's using your own brain rather than being dictated to. A couple of interesting results in the club in Mayo. Belmullet 2-4 to 1-4. Not exactly a classic here. Ryan Donoghue's club, Belmullet. And obviously the mullet from Belmullet, we all know who that is, Willie Joe Padden. So it's good to see them. They beat the defending champions Knockmore, and Westport beat Castlebar Mitchells again this year. Looks like Castlebar Mitchells' dominance is a thing of the past.
Yeah, well, Mitchells didn't even get out of the group last year. Yeah. Well, it was the first time in, I think, 8 or 9 years. Possibly, no, I think it was since 2007. And Westport were in their group last year, and they beat them well. They beat them very well, actually. Now, I watched a lot of that game on Saturday. It was a terrible game for about 20 minutes. I think it was 1-1 at the first water break. It was very defensive, but opened up a lot in the second half. Westport are a class team. I tipped them to win Mayo last year. I'm tipping them again this year. They were beaten in by Bravey in the semi-final, but they were very wasteful last year. So just very strong throughout. Lee Geegan was playing cornerback. He's marking Neil Douglas, who's probably been the outstanding forward in the club game in Mayo the last couple of years, and just didn't give him a sniff, and then kicked an inspirational point himself. Fionn McDonough has been in and out of the county setup. He was midfield. He was excellent. And they have a couple of just really standout forwards as well. So they'll be hard stopped. And then Knockmore, Belmullet came up from intermediate only a couple of years ago. And I know we talk about, I think it's Aughrim is the ultimate tough place to go in GAA, but there's nowhere harder than Belmullet. It's just like gale force freeze or par for the course, and Belmullet know the pitch so well that they know how to deal with the conditions. So it was, I think, 2-4 to 1-4, and I think the second half was 2 points to 1 to Knockmore. So, but yeah, that was a bit like Knockmore probably aren't firing on all cylinders that they were this year, but that still is a massive scalp. And then they're also in a group with Charlestown, who are coming strong as well. So Knockmore playing Charlestown, and they could be out if they don't win in the last group game. So that it's really, there's a lot of groups like that in Mayo. It's really exciting. It's hard to pick a winner as well.
Yeah, it's definitely heating up. They obviously aren't knockout games. Knockmore still in it, like Conor said. In Kilkenny hurling, Niall, I thought this was a very interesting one. So O'Loughlin Gales beat Roar in a Stoig.
In a Stieg.
I got that wrong last year. I've got corrected on it, and a year later I forget it again. Anyways, you have it right. Paddy Deegan's playing full forward. He scored 5 points from play. Now they scored 325, but I couldn't believe this. I reckon Brian Cody's looking at this going, that's a very interesting one. You'll be able to play TJ at centre forward all the time. A little foil for Owen Cody in the full forward line. Paddy Deegan, who would have thought this?
Yeah, I think club full backs in Kilkenny will be telling to feck off down the other end of the field now in the team. But Paddy Deegan, I just seen he's been playing there all year for O'Loughlin Gales, Wooly. Andy Comerford, the former Kilkenny manager, or the former Kilkenny player and former Kildare manager, he's the O'Loughlin Gales manager, and he's had Paddy Deegan in there. I suppose they've Hugh Lawler as a centre back, and they've another big man full back, a Tony Forstall fella. So I suppose they've been kind of thereabouts, lacking something in Kilkenny. Yeah. So they're probably saying, we'll try something here. And sure, Paddy Deegan, he's such a big man, such a physical player, a ball winner. He's the type of lad you'd lump ball in on top of him, and it'd be hard to beat him to a ball for any full back. And I suppose since Colin Fennelly left the Kilkenny team,
that's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Paddy Deegan, it would be quite. You don't see it too often these days, do you? Like a player completely changing from a back to, especially a full forward. And it's not something you would have seen coming. But the more I think about it, I think Paddy Deegan, he'd do a job. As you said, he'd throw the ball out to Owen Cody, these sort of fast lads around him. And I think he could do a job there for Kilkenny.
Well, that's it. I was thinking he could do a job, and I'd understand that. It's the 5 points I can't get my head around. Yeah, you know what I mean? What's your role in there, mate? Are you throwing it around, or are you actually going to be a scoring forward?
I was reading the report they played Dixborough the week before, Wooly, and it was just Paddy Deegan was full forward. Paddy Deegan didn't get a score. It was just he was causing all sorts of problems for the Dixborough full back. They had a titanic tussle. and he was throwing balls out to his fellow forwards. But maybe now he's getting more used to it. Paddy says, I'm going to stick over a few points here now.
Who's your man in Tipperary? His name is jumping at me here now. He was a full back to full forward. Shelley. He might be a little bit older. Was it Shelley? He was a hard man, no nonsense cornerback, full back who turned full forward and was an awful handful.
Jeez,
Shelley?
Wooly, I'm going to be crucified in Tipperary now for not knowing this one. But I suppose.
Wooly, sorry, I never said as well when I was mentioning Westport there. Kevin Kane, obviously former fullback for Mayo, is now playing full forward for Westport and has been for the last couple of years, and scored I think 3 points from play against Castlebar on Saturday, and had been playing really well. So just it just the Paddy Deegan example reminded me. So it's obviously not just limited to Kenny.
Yeah, we know Keane isn't great under a high ball. Let's go back to another heartbreaking All Ireland 2012, Conor.
I'll say nothing.
Okay, 1 second, lads. We're just going to break it there. I want to find out what this lad. It'll
It's
save
not
you and me.
Micheál Webster, no,
No,
that's not who you're thinking
no.
of. When
Conor
was it?
Shelley. Around the 2000.
Jeez, yeah, you're wrong.
Is it-
What's his name?
Not
It is Shelley. It is Shelley. Paul Shelley.
Jeez, I've never fucking
You don't
heard-
remember him?
Never heard of him.
There it is. Here he is. Paul Shelley. That's it. Okay, I'll just start back with him. Paul Shelley.
Where is he from? What club there? Just so I have a clue.
Well, you probably weren't
give-
even born at this stage.
I
Don't
was
feel
3,
bad.
I'd say.
Give Niall no credit for this, Willie.
Okay, we'll just start back here now, anyways, from what you said. Paul Shelley, is it Paul? Wait, I won't go that high. Paul Shelley was his name. That was his name. Yeah, cornerback, no nonsense, hard as nails. This fella is. Listen, it was before your time, Niall. Don't feel bad about it. That's okay. It
I was
doesn't make
only-
you any less of a
I was-
Tipperary man.
I was only 3 years of age there around 2000, Willie, so I wasn't too big into the hurling back then.
Yeah, well, all I'd be saying, I wouldn't be starting on this Paul Shelley lad anyways, because he looked like he was as hard as nails. Another bit of news here, lads, is Kildare have announced their management team. This came out of the blue, Conor, completely, because Glenn Ryan, apparently, the talk is, didn't actually want to interview for this job. And everybody was talking that this is Tom Cribbins. And if Tom Cribben doesn't get it, it's Davy Burke's. And Glenn Ryan wasn't in the mix at all. And then at the last hour, last Thursday, Glenn Ryan agreed to interview for the job. He's brought in Anthony Rainbow, Dermot Earley and Johnny Doyle. It's like anyone who's ever won an All-Star in Kildare is on this bloody team. And, after so many years of kind of outside managers, Kildare have 4 legends over the team now. And kind of, I don't know, it has excited me a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, and I think I correct me if I'm wrong. I think I heard Brian Lacey is involved now as well, which leads me to wonder like how quickly Glenn was able to get these guys together. Was it the thing that they talked about this in the background for a long time, or was it the thing that the vacancy suddenly became available, an opportunity became available last week, and he decided to get the band back together? It's like the reformation of a supergroup or something like that. But to me, I would say this is a big boost for without being centrally involved in it. I would say it's a right boost for Kildare football because I'd say there's a lot of hurt about the Jack O'Connor stuff. The way he went about it was a little bit unedifying. So I'd say there was a lot of disappointment and maybe a bit of anger about the whole process. So to get you could not draw whatever Brian Lacey if it's 5, but you could not get 4 more iconic names in Kildare football than the 4 lads. And it's not just their names either. Like Glenn Ryan was over the team the Longford team that beat Mayo way back in 2010.
Yeah.
Before the whole era. Anthony Rainbow's managed with Carlo Ballyboden. And like if Johnny Doyle coaches a good game as well as he talks a good game on this show, well then he's going to be a huge addition to the setup as well. So I don't know, like I without having huge insight into their coaching intentions, I think it's a big thing for Kildare, and especially there's nothing wrong with outside managers, but when you haven't had a native manager for a long time, I think it might just get people kind of get the grow back and get the interest back in Kildare, and it's certainly what they need at the moment.
I think that's important with Kildare, to kind of thrive on momentum. And I don't know, maybe I'm being influenced by the 97, 98 Micco kind of, the interest in that. And Jack O'Connor didn't really capture that. Yeah. He didn't really, they were kind of meh Like, was there much improvement in them in the 2 years? If we're being honest, not really. I didn't see too much of it. Like, whereas Glenn Ryan, Anthony Rainbow, Dermot Earley, and Brian Lacey, and he's got inter-county experience with Tipperary. Like, I mean, that is something that will excite Kildare clubs, excite their fans, and Newbridge will be hopping for their first league game.
As I proved there a minute ago, Wally, my knowledge of maybe 2000 GA isn't all that good, but if I was asked to name 4 Kildare players, and like you're talking about iconic Kildare players, they're the 4 lads that you'd name. And like Glenn Ryan, he's managed Longford before, and as we were saying this morning, he managed Round Towers to that big win over Moorfield as well, so he's coming in with a bit of form into the hot seat.
Yeah, he is. And I remember, I keep kind of using this as an example, maybe with the online abuse. The time the mistake happened on the show with the Eddie Brennan interview, like I was kind of at home really kind of low after that, and the phone rings and it's Glenn Ryan. And I don't know Glenn Ryan well. Like, I mean, I interviewed him maybe once or twice, played against him, and he rang me up to see how I was. He says, don't worry about that all, Wooly, just stay away from that. Like, there are a lot of begrudgers out there. And I was thinking, like, he pepped me up. Like, imagine what kind of a man manager this lad is. Like, Conor, not only to the way he's able to pep you up, but to identify that lad could do with a phone call. Like, I mean, that's gone above and beyond anything he needed to do there. So I can only imagine how good he would be with his own team. You know, and when you're a complete gentleman like that and selfless like that, players will really respond to that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that's a huge thing. That's a huge thing for him to do, because like I know you would have played against each other and probably had some massive battles and probably a few words, you know, every now and again. But just to identify the fact that you mightn't be in a great place, and just say, you know, I'll give this fella a phone call, and if it has the little impact, and it obviously had more than a little impact, going on what you're saying there, and just that ability to, because like I say there, I don't know much about Glenn Ryan's coaching credentials, but like in terms of his that speaks so much for his management ability.
Yeah,
and that's going to be half the battle, and if he's the man that's everything that I remember about Glenn Ryan is inspirational. If he's going to inspire people, if he's going to be that good of a man manager, and he can look after that side of it, and he maybe has Andy Rainbow and Brian Lacey to look after the coaching end of it, that just speaks volumes for Kildare. But the point you make there, I think, is crucial about Jack O'Connor maybe not getting it. You know, it was a bit there was a bit of apathy about Kildare football, to be honest, and whatever happens with Glenn Ryan, you can certainly guarantee that won't be the case.
Yeah, definitely. Talking about Jack O'Connor, the man he replaced, Peter Keane, released a statement in the time since the last show. He says, unfortunately, losing the semi-final by 1 point in extra time to the eventual All-Ireland winners led to a decision to end the work that we had started and the momentum we had built. I know the players very much wanted us to continue with our project. They were the reason I wanted to stay. We were a united Kerry team with a great sense of purpose and ambition. I suppose he's right. He lost the semi-final by a point after extra time. This will tell you how demanding Kerry kind of is as a county, and the fact that they have had a lot of success underage has made them even more demanding, and they haven't won an All-Ireland since 2015, which, you know, is starting to really annoy them. He said that the players very much wanted us to continue with our project. Now, Sean O'Shea and David Clifford were on Terrace Talk. I have to say, give Terrace Talk their due. Like, I mean, I'd have no chance of getting those two on the show. I remember asking Sean O'Shea, it was his debut coming off. They played Clare. I walked over to him on the field and he just kind of brushed me away. He said, like, Sean O'Shea just doesn't do much interviews. And David Clifford, not even after a match, but Terrace Talk with the local pull are able to get these lads on it. But anyways, the point of the matter is, Sean O'Shea was asked about it, and he said, as players, our job is to go out in the field and play, and everything outside that is left to the people in charge in the county board. Now, I suppose if the players very much wanted them to continue, would Sean O'Shea have referenced that? You know, I suppose it's...
I don't think so. I don't think so in this kind of day and age. I don't think county players, and especially young lads,
but you see, him saying they wanted Peter Keane to continue wouldn't necessarily mean they didn't want Jack O'Connor to get it. Because if Peter Keane continued when they gave them the support, that was probably before, you know, there was any other nominations, for example.
Yeah, but would it be interpreted as kind of they're longing for Peter Keane? And you know, I'd say the lads probably, regardless of what they wanted, they were just not going to say anything about it. You know, it kind of just brush over it either way, I'd say, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't know. Niall probably has a point, Conor. I suppose if he had said, yeah, we were after Peter Keane, the headlines would be players don't want O'Connor, maybe, or something like that.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And at that stage, well, like I know Jack O'Connor probably hadn't been made official at that stage, but it looked like it was going to happen. So they're probably thinking as well, even though they're the two best players, and Jack O'Connor would be a fool if he's going to, create some sort of divide with the two of them. But they mightn't necessarily want to do anything that might affect their relationship with Jack O'Connor down the line as well. Like I heard that said that Clifford and O'Shea might have said something, but what I'd read more into is the rumblings that I've heard since that. Well, while Peter Keane says we were united and all the players are behind it, I've heard that mightn't necessarily be 100% the case. That it would be support, but maybe tentative support, let's say. So I'd be putting more reading into that, but I'd be with Niall in terms of they don't want to give this whatever they said. It would give them the legs. They support O'Connor. They support Peter Keane, and by saying what they said, which is essentially, with due respect to the lads, nothing. They're just ending it there and preventing them from being involved in the story for another few weeks.
It's a very difficult one, actually, for a panel of players. So Peter Keane will go to them, look, lads, we want to stay. Do you want us to stay? Do you know what I mean? What did they say? No. Then they're ousting a manager, and Mayo players got very bad press for that at the time. So, he could be the manager next year. So anyone that says no, it could be involved. It's a really difficult one for players to answer. Maybe, honestly, and now maybe he sent them away into a room to come back. But again, he's applying for the job next year. You don't know if he's going. It's just a difficult one to when he says we had the backing of the players.
Yeah, I'd say there's very few players who would say to a manager who could be there next year, no, we don't want you. I'd say it's more probably the sound of the silence. If players say nothing, then that's your no, because they would let you know if they want you to stay on. And we don't know what way it was in Kerry, it's kind of behind the scenes, you just don't know what way it was. So
yeah. And I'm sure it wasn't terrible. It's not like, that it was a terrible management team. It was clearly a decent management team. So maybe the players wouldn't have minded that much, or a lot of them wouldn't mind. Anyways, listen, we probably talked too much about that Kerry job. Peter Keane's gone at this stage now. Another one is that, so the GPA, Conor, have come in right behind this league championship proposal. And what they have done is they're asking players to lobby their county boards. So senior intercounty football squads are to lobby their county board to support the league championship. Support for the B proposal is overwhelmingly among players, so much now that they're prepared to contact officials to back the motion. I just, out of curiosity, last Friday rang around a few counties, and they're all, none of them have actually met yet. But the individuals that I spoke to were all in favour of the league-based championship. But you don't know what happens. And then you don't know what happens when the county meets and they mandate the delegate, whether the delegate votes the way they tell them to or not, because they can do it in secrecy and they mightn't fancy this at all. So we don't know. But it is interesting, the GPA are actually telling, imagine, I suppose, the county captain, the James McCarthy or Johnny Cooper, going into that county board meeting and saying, lads, this is what we're after. This is what we want. And the same in other counties. Surely that has influence, Conor.
Well, they're the ones that are going to be playing it. Do you know what I mean? So surely that should be the prime consideration. But as we've come to see in the past, that's not necessarily the case, especially when Congress is involved. But I was glad to see the GPA come out because, and I've heard a few players come out publicly and back it as well, and that's important because. The worry about this, and I think you might have brought this up last week, Willie, was that not enough kind of light would be shed on how important a decision this is going to be and how big of an impact it's going to make on the football championship for years to come. And the danger being that we would eventually get to Congress, not enough information is out there, not enough public support is out there for Proposal B, and it wouldn't get the necessary 6%. So it's kind of logic should dictate that if the players say, and they're overwhelmingly back it, if the players say that they want this proposal, that's what should go ahead because they're the ones going to be playing it, as I said. But I just hope that's the case because to be honest, I'm seeing plenty of opposition to Proposal B or support for the status quo. I'm not seeing much support for that other Proposal A, but I'm seeing a bit of support for the status quo, and the danger is that that'll get enough support that's what we're going to be stuck with.
That's the problem. One man who is completely against Proposal B is Brian McAvoy, who's the Ulster Secretary. He's going above and beyond trying to rubbish this Plan B. So much so I contacted him, and he's coming on the show on Thursday. So we'll be able to have... And he pretty much knows from my interactions with him where my which side I'm coming down on. So it would be interesting conversation between me and Brian. I have a few bones to pick with him because, like, I mean, maybe he listens to the show. Now I'm giving him a heads up on what I'm going to say. Like, I mean, he says even if we drill down further, you're in Division 3, but you end up being relegated to Division 4. Then you end up winning the Talton Cup. Not only are you going to go out, or not only then are you going to get out of Division 4, you're going to be promoted to Division 2. How in the name of God could people come up with that? So what he's saying, if you win the Talton Cup, you get promotion, right? But if you're relegated, you don't get promotion. You're not relegated. So the third bottom team would be relegated. Do you understand what I mean? So, like, I mean, you definitely get, if there's a carrot for winning the Talton Cup. If you're just mid-table, you get promoted. If you're relegated, you don't get relegated. There's no question the situation that Brian is trying to say. He says if you drill down further, he's trying to say that you can get relegated from 3 down to 4, win the Talton Cup and get promoted to 2. That is not true. It's misinformation, Brian. It's not true. And then he has the absolute cheek to continue on. He says, I've spoken to some inter-county players, and when I've explained to them the proposal, they've looked at me mesmerised and said, we weren't told that. They weren't told it because it's not true, Brian. You're making this up. Like, I mean, this is what's really frustrating me. I can't wait to talk to Brian because he's on record, Conor, giving out misinformation and telling people that players are amazed when they hear this.
Yeah, but this is the problem. So not only is there not enough information out there, there's actually misinformation out there from some of the key stakeholders. Do you know what I mean? So that's the problem. You picked out that particular instance, Wooly, of what he was saying. What I took another issue with he was kind of saying that I think he said you could have a situation where a Division 1 team loses 4 or 5 games under this system, and the manager says to himself, if I'm not going to make top 5, I'll take my chances. I'd rather be relegated because we make the championship next year if we finish in the top 3. I was just like that's such a retrograde kind of, that's such a retrograde kind of scenario. What manager would be thinking like that? Like surely it's all about kind of long-term development. Like no team wants to get relegated because the higher up they're playing, the better quality opposition they're playing all the time, and that's going to make them better and give them better chance of success as well. I mean, I could drill down into a lot of the stuff he said, and I poke holes in it, but I think you're going to be a better man to do that than me, and looking forward to hearing what he has to say in response on Thursday.
Yeah, so like, I mean, Brian, listen, I don't have a problem with Brian. Brian obviously doesn't like B. I passionately love B. So we're going to have a disagreement. I told him we'd have a light-hearted debate, which we will, or a good-natured debate, which we will, which would be absolutely no harm. So I'm looking forward to have Brian on the show.
I'm looking forward to it as well.
But like, I mean, that and we've talked about that before, Conor, as well. I mean, why have Kildare been desperate to get out of Division 2 into Division 1? Why have Meath been desperate to get out of Division 2 into Division 1? Why have Galway, when they were in Division 2, so desperate to get out of it into Division 1? Armagh, any of them. It's to play the top teams. You think this mad scenario that Brian is envisaging, that Armagh will say, here, do you know what? We've lost our first 4 games. We're not good enough for these teams. We'll go back into Division 2. We'll get first place in Division 2. Armagh, you're going to have to play those big teams in the quarter-final. And you won't have played them all year, and you're going to get beaten, and then you're going to say, geez, you know what, we weren't playing the top teams, and we're just, we were taken by surprise. It's a much higher standard. I don't buy that. I don't buy that at all. I see zero disadvantage. Now, I know I'm very biased towards this plan B. I see zero disadvantages outside of the prestige of the Ulster Championship, because the other 3, I think, can live with it. The Ulster Championship has a prestige, and I understand that's what Brian is probably trying to protect. But at the same time, if it's as special as they all say it is, why can't it continue special? Why does it have to be connected to the All-Ireland if it's as good as they all say it is? It should keep its prestige if the Ulster Championship is the Munster Hurling Championship. Do you know what I mean? It has to, or else it's not as good as they're saying. Conor?
But the thing is as well is that, like, the way it is at the moment, a lot of the Ulster Championship teams will be playing against each other in competitive games, at the height of summer anyway. I know it's not the Ulster Championship in its traditional form, but it's like Ulster teams, high quality Ulster teams playing really competitive games against each other at the height of summer, which is exactly what you want. Like, there was another thing. Like, I completely get the kind of prestige that, like, Ulster people put in their championship. It's the best championship, and certainly in football. Niall will never let me get away with saying it's better than the Munster Hurling Championship. We won't go there. But there was, like, he said something as well. He's like, you lose your first 3 or 4 games, you're in danger of relegation, but you've already lost your main focus. And I was kind of like, how many games do you want? Like, do you know, like, it's, if you're losing your first 3 or 4 games, well then just like, you know, if you're on a bad path anyway, it's probably, that season is probably not going to go well for you. But it's just, I think you made the point there that, like, in terms of you can't find any kind of, you know, you can't find zero fault with proposal B. Like, in terms of the options that are on the table, I know I'm biased as well because I support it as well, but I just can't see how anybody would put either the status quo or that other proposal A that nobody seems to support out in front of proposal B.
Yeah, me neither. Like, and again, if some of the things I've had issues with, Brian said something like, it's the worst proposal he's ever seen go to Congress. Like, come on, Brian. Like, I mean, I'm definitely starting the interview with that quote. The worst proposal he's ever seen come to Congress. Jesus, Brian. Anyways, listen, we look forward to that on Thursday. Colin Bonner has finalised his backroom team. He's named Tommy Dunn. Jeez, Tommy Dunn is just a selfless servant of Tipperary hurling, isn't he? He's his third management team now to be in under. He's not looking for any glory limelight. He's a very, very good coach. The Dublin lads loved him, and now he's back in again under a new management. And interesting, Colin Bonner said, I've been a big fan of Tommy since our playing days together, and while I was keen to ensure some continuity to the setup, Tommy is really excited about the new approach we've been discussing over the last number of weeks. Yeah. What's this? What is this now?
Well, I couldn't tell you, Wooly, but all I can say is, like, when a fella goes in as a selector, or kind of in working with a team and not as the manager, I suppose you could nearly compare it to Stephen Rochford in with Donegal. It kind of says a lot about their sort of character, that they don't really want the headlines. They just kind of want to be involved, and like that seems to be the way with Tommy Dunn, definitely. And like as you said there, Colin Bonner, he seems to be hitting all the right notes. Like he said, there's definitely, I'd say there's no other county that takes their divisions as seriously as we do in Tipperary. And he has a man in the setup from each of the 4 divisions. Like, he's from the West, and there's men from each of the other 3 as well.
Johnny Enright and Paul Curran. Paul Curran's still hurling with Mullinahone.
With Mullinahone, and Johnny Enright, former Thurles Sarsfield's hurler. And I suppose the fact that, like, you know, there's 32 senior teams in Wooly, in Tipperary, Wooly. So, like, it just goes to show, like, there could be a few players who might, you know, slip through the cracks. Maybe they didn't make it underage. They've done well for their club in the last few years. And like, when you have a man from each division, like, there's divisional championships in each of those divisions, so those lads will know who the hurlers are, and I suppose that will be a good thing for Tipperary hurling in general going forward. Like,
yeah, no, it definitely will. It's all about the backroom team. So big fan of Colin Bonner so far. There's no point. I don't want to be disrespectful to Colin Bonner. Almost underwhelming choice, but everything he's been saying since he got it, and his Tommy Dunn back in, you know, like, I mean, you start looking at that, you know, a little bit more enthusiastically. Last story of the day before we get into Pauric Mahony, Shane Curran. Like, I mean, these lads are just addicted to it. Like, I mean, it's. I was looking at Ricey McManaman. It looks like he's going to be in with Cavan. He finished playing. He managed a ladies football team, and then he went in under Rory Gallagher, and then he managed Fermanagh, and now he's gone maybe in under Mickey Graham. And Shane Curran's been around the block. Just love coaching and managing. He's after managing, geez, I'll be killed in Westmeath for pronouncing this wrong, Caulry, Cowlery. I never heard of that club before. They've made the knockout stages in the Westmeath Championship for the first time in their history. That's probably why I've never heard of them. Shane Curran gets a red card to get a last minute goal. Curran's already in the stand, Conor. They draw 2-10 to 113 against neighbours Moat, and all this is kicking off in Westmeath. Curran's in the stand, a last minute penalty, and no one in the country knows of all these little subplots that are going on all over the place.
Yeah, drama and Shane Curran going hand in hand. Yeah, again, it's great to see. I was just looking into it. I didn't get any, you know, revelations on why he was exactly red carded, but I'm sure it was a cool, calm and collected argument he might have had with an official on the day.
Yeah, they looked out. Another nice little story out of this. One of the goals, Cowlery. Any better pronunciation of this, lads? Am I right? Cowlery?
Anyway.
No, I'm going to leave you to it. Let you suffer this.
I'll have about 4 DMs by the end of tonight. One of Cowlery's goals was scored by Ollie Baker's son, which is incredible. I'm pretty sure he's He's a inspector, a guard or something. Ollie is in Westmeath, somewhere like that. So his son is playing football. I would have thought that would have been banned in the Baker house, but
You seen the light.
he's seen the light. Another nice little story. Anyways, I thought it'd be a nice one to finish with there. We'll leave it there, lads, and we'll come back with Pauric Mahony. So Ballygunner won 8 in a row yesterday, as we know, and Pauric Mahony scored 9 points, and he joins us on the line now. How's it going, Pauric?
Good, Colin. Yourself?
All good, all good. How's the head today?
Not too bad now. Not too bad. The early closing of the pubs is a good thing, I think. Especially moving on in the years now. So the earlier you're home, the better. So, but look, no, we had a good bit of crack last night, and I think moments like that, like this, you really have to enjoy and celebrate. And after a long year, a lot of hard work gone in. So it's great to get a reward at the end of it.
And what's the plan for today? Obviously, you're a little bit fresher than you would if there were later pub times. Like, I presume it's 8 in a row. You have the day after kind of scheduled down to a T at this stage.
Yeah, we do. I suppose we're after getting familiar with the routine over the last number of years, but we'll meet up there later today, and just go down to one of the local pubs for a few more points, I suppose, and a little bit more celebration. But there's a few of us actually heading off to Portugal there tomorrow morning, so we'll have to wrap it up pretty early there this evening. So we're fresh for the flight in the morning. Jesus,
this 8-week gap until the Munster Club, you're making sure you take advantage of that anyway.
Yeah, sure. It's strange, I suppose, because normally in previous years you're kind of straight into the Munster Club, where I suppose you're obviously you have to come quickly down off the high, I suppose, of the victory, and you're back training 2 or 3 days later. But I suppose in this situation now we kind of have a little bit of break, and probably no harm clear up a few little niggles and injuries that we have within the squad. So I suppose we'll just have to make the most of it, really, and get back training next week and put the heads down. And I suppose it's going to be difficult to prepare compared to previous years, but there's a good setup there, and I'm sure the lads are already working on a plan to make sure that we're ready for 7 weeks' time.
Yeah, it is a bit of a disadvantage for you guys, though, isn't it? Like, 8 weeks is an awful break. It's almost like the break after winning a Munster to an All-Ireland semi-final, which is a terrible wait as well. Like, I mean, you obviously in Waterford played a hurling off first. It's not much of an advantage to you guys in Ballygunner.
Not really. I suppose we do have a lot of the lads who are involved with Galtier and the football as well, so it's going to be difficult to manage that in terms of numbers and getting lads getting the full group together. But as I said, the likes of Shay Fitzpatrick and David Franks, these lads, they're well used to the big stage and getting teams to their pitch when it's needed. So I'm happy to leave it in their hands now, and I'm sure they'll have a plan to make sure that we're in peak condition, peak performance for 8 weeks' time.
One other thing I wanted to ask you about today, mentioning the schedules, has the tradition of going to the schools with the cup, is that not back up running again, with some restrictions still in place?
Yeah, no, unfortunately it's not. Obviously going up to Ballygunner National School and down to the Gael School has always been a ritual on the Monday after a county final, but unfortunately with the COVID restrictions it's not. But I'm sure the cup will probably be in the school in the school at some stage this week. All right.
Yeah, no, it probably will. You're winning the finals pretty easily now, Pauric. I know, like, I mean, every county final is going to be difficult. I saw Stephen O'Keefe and your manager talking about focusing on a good start. Is that kind of the way you see it? Not give these underdogs any hope and just kind of blow it out of the water early.
Yeah, look, I suppose every game you kind of have different strategies and different plans and different approaches to the games. And yesterday, obviously, I suppose we said we need to really, lay down our marker from the minute the ball is thrown in. And I suppose we went pretty aggressively at the start. Obviously, you see Tyke Foley playing corner back, and next minute he's up in the full forward line giving a pass to Desi for the goal. And I suppose we kind of just, it was kind of shackles off really in the first 5 or 10 minutes, and there was a strong breeze there in Welsh Park yesterday. So we knew that, like, if we did stand back and let no more get on top of us, that before we know it, we could have been 4, 5, 6 points down, and all of a sudden you're chasing the game. So we did put a lot of emphasis on the start yesterday, and it is nice when you you talk about something during the week and then it actually pays off on the day.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. And like, I mean, you're wearing number 15. You're drifting around. You almost like you have a free whatever role you want. You like to get it across to Desi as soon as possible. I think you all like to get it across to Desi as soon as possible.
Yeah, well, I suppose when you have Desi in the form like he's in there yesterday, why wouldn't you feed him the ball, you know?
Yeah.
And but like it's you know, you look back over the last couple of games, I suppose, and it hasn't just been Desi. You know, a lot of the younger lads really have stepped up to the plate this year, and you know, when leadership was needed, it wasn't the kind of the, I suppose, the lads who were there the last, you know, 6 or 7, 8 years. It was the lads that are there the last 1 or 2 years, and that was really great to see. And you know, I suppose they're the lads that kind of keep the older lads motivated and keep pushing us and training. And you know, ultimately they're getting the best out of us, and we're hopefully getting the best out of them. So there's a nice balance there at the moment.
Yeah, there is a nice balance, and like, I mean, there's a lot of talk, obviously, with younger players coming through, that this dominance doesn't look like it's going to stop. And you know, it had the same thing in Laois with Portlaoise. They got 9 in a row before they were beaten, and then won another 3. Like, some people say the dominance isn't good for Waterford hurling. Then I suppose you look at your county team, and the county team's flying it. So I don't know how the two kind of marry together.
Yeah, like I don't know. People say it's not good for Waterford hurling. Like when you look at the Waterford Championship this year, I think it's been a great championship. You know, we were I suppose backs to the wall in the last 2 games against Formal Water in the quarter final and Mount Sinai in the semi final, and you know, a puck of the ball either way.
Yeah.
Ultimately decided them games. So there's certainly the gap that people may talk about. Yes, looking in from the outside yesterday, you might think there's a gap there, but there's certainly not. And there's, you know, there's 5 or 6 teams there that, you know, on any given day can beat anyone. And to me, the Waterford Championship is stronger than it's ever been at the moment.
Yeah, you seem to have a right set up, in that even like Barry Coughlin retired, he probably would have had a couple more years. Your brother Philip retired, he would have had a couple more years. Stephen O'Keefe announced his retirement on TG Cahir after the game yesterday. I thought he'd be back with Waterford. The great thing, I suppose, that Ballygunner players have is that they know they're going to have, you know, a good season and be playing high level hurling, you know, towards the latter end of the season. So maybe it makes the decision for those lads to finish up with the county that little bit easier.
Yeah, maybe. And I suppose, you know, we set high standards in Ballygunner as well, and it can be quite demanding and challenging to kind of stay up to the kind of level of inter-county and then carry that right through to the club season. So really, you're, like you say there, it's you could be talking 10, 11 months of the year where you're with very little downtime. And I suppose ultimately the likes of Barry, Philip and Stephen have made that call, knowing that with comfort that Ballygunner is going to be still at you know, a high intensity and a high level, and trying to achieve something. So I suppose it does make it a little bit easier. But yeah, so I suppose in the overall bigger picture, like, it's we're very, very fortunate that we can go up to the pitch in Ballygunner, and that there's, you know, such good clubmen there that are keep driving it on every year. Same heads are there, and ultimately we're just really, really lucky that we're part of this setup at the moment.
Barry Coughlin in his speech yesterday thanked the management team, the backroom team and the performance team. What the hell's going on here? What kind of a backroom team do you guys have?
I don't know. I don't think it's anything outside of the norm anyways, but it's as I said, we're very, very fortunate that, you know, David Franks is obviously down with us for the last 5 years, and he's like one of our own club mates at this stage. You know, he's just part of the furniture now here, and we're very, very lucky to have Dave. And then, you know, as I said, there's a lot of experience and knowledge within the Ballygunner club, and thankfully we're able to pull on a lot of resources from that. And you know, the likes of Tygo Sullivan, for example, we're very, very fortunate with the likes of Tyg and Sinead Fitzpatrick, Siobhan and Shay Fitzpatrick. Like, you know, what a family they are. From doctors, physios, trainers, they have it all, and we're just lucky at the moment that they're all in the club at the one time.
Yeah, you need the physios anyways after the year you're after having. So how are you feeling now?
Yeah, not too bad. The knee is very good, which is obviously being the top priority has been getting that right. But you know yourself, when you come back from a long-term injury, you start picking up little niggles here and there. So I suppose, like you say there, I think Siobhan is sick of seeing me now every night for the last 5 or 6 weeks just to get me onto the field, and I'm obviously very, very grateful of the work that they've done over the last number of weeks, because we haven't got a huge volume of training done. So hopefully now, with a little bit of rest over the next week, and then we will start getting some high level of training in before Munster Club.
you've had the weirdest kind of year in that you missed no club hurling whatsoever. You won the county final last year. And now you're back to win it again this year, but you've missed 2 inter-county seasons. Like, I mean, with the way the winter championship happened last year, this one bloody injury, which happened last October, just before the last year's November-December championship, and ran through to miss 2 seasons.
Yeah, it was unfortunate, no doubt about it, and obviously, especially last year was extremely tough because it was so close to the championship when it happened. I think it was 2 weeks out from the first round of the Munster Championship against Cork, so it was extremely difficult. I suppose you have more kind of time then to prepare yourself for the games this year, and I suppose it's a little bit different too, sitting in the stand as a spectator. And I would have gone to a couple of games with Ty de Burke, and I suppose the two of us kind of looking at each other, kind of saying, "Jesus, we're after getting a tough deal of it here." But that's just sport, I suppose. And as I said, yeah, it made yesterday all the sweeter too, after watching a lot of hurling over the last, say, 12 months, and to get back out there yesterday and just to be I suppose close to your full fitness, it's just great.
Talk to me about how the injury happened, because it was in a challenge game against Wexford, like you said, just before the championship. And from reading stuff you said, like, I mean, you felt a twinge when you reached in, I think, to tackle and played on, and then felt it again when you gave a hand pass. Like, these cruciates are happening. I can't get my head around them. They're happening so innocuously, and you're out a year, even though it doesn't feel like that bloody much on the field.
Yeah, it's mad, I suppose. I didn't, normally you'd hear people twisting or they jump up for a ball and they'd land awkwardly on it. I was literally just running after someone and literally put my hurley in to try and intercept the ball off the opponent, and next minute just felt something in the back of my knee. I suppose you had an excruciating pain for maybe 20-30 seconds, and thought none of it. Then I kind of was saying to myself, Jesus, I'm after make a show of myself here with a little bit of a roar, and next minute all of a sudden I'm back up playing. And then I just went to turn again then, and should they say you could run a marathon with a cruciate, with your cruciate gone. It's just because it's you can run straight lines. It's just if you turn, you'll know all about it fairly quickly. And yeah, I don't know why it's so prominent in sport now. We obviously had Tim O'Sullivan done his ACL for Ballygunner this year, and the same kind of thing, just in a challenge match, didn't look to be anything in it at all, and next minute all of a sudden, 2 days later he gets a scanner and his ACL is torn. So I don't know. Is it the training or what it is? But I'm sure there's plenty of different theories out there.
And do
to say why it's happening so much. But
do the surgeons, when you go in and talk to them, do they have any explanation, or do they understand how, especially in your case where you were just kind of running? Like, do they have any understanding or theories on how it would happen?
They say, I didn't really ask too many questions on it now, but I suppose maybe we were doing a heavy block of training at the time at Waterford, and so maybe because I suppose we were kind of after being I suppose away from each other for so long that we probably were trying to catch up on a couple of weeks training and squash it into kind of a short period of time. Maybe that I was a bit fatigued playing that match, I don't know. But really, he's just unlucky. That's the surgeon was saying. Ty was telling me that, look, you're just very unlucky. There's nothing, there's no real reason to say why it happened, or there's nothing to say that you had a weakness there or anything in particular. It's just an unfortunate kind of turn, and next minute all of a sudden it tears, and there's no real explanation for it.
Yeah, and just last on this, out of curiosity, say if you had, when you felt that excruciating pain, if you had gone off at that stage, would you have been in a better situation than when you felt the pain again? Or even for players listening to this, the minute you feel that excruciating pain in your knee, just go off, it'll go away. Yeah. But maybe not enough players understand, what that is.
Maybe. Yeah, that's true. I suppose, they say, I suppose, when whether you slightly do your ACL or whether you completely tear it, you still have to go under the same procedure, same operation. So
right.
I suppose that the timelines are the recovery time period. I don't think it's going to be any different. They say now you nearly need to give it the 9 months, before you can kind of go back into full contact play. I don't think I done it any worse. Obviously, Ty de Burke, when he done it in the All-Ireland final against Limerick, he obviously he went done it, and the same thing, went try and play again and then felt it again. So I don't think it was it wouldn't make any difference if he went off the first time, for example.
Yeah, no, I get you. And Peter Casey obviously did his in the All-Ireland final, and he was tipping away trying to run it off. Like, I mean, isn't it mad you think in your head you can run off an injury that keeps you out for nearly a year?
Yeah, I suppose it's just in the heat of the moment, like All-Ireland final, you'd literally do anything to stay on the field, and I suppose that's why the two lads have probably tried to go again, even though they deep down they probably knew that they were in bother. But I suppose the last thing you want to turn around in a week after an All Ireland, and all of a sudden you're fine again. And you could have played on. So I suppose you're willing to do whatever it takes to kind of stay on the field.
Yeah. So it even added more heartbreak to you. You were supposed to be captain that year, and you stayed involved with the team. You were in, pretty much Liam asked you to stay involved, and then 2021 season you watched it with Tig in the stand. You didn't want? Did you want that separation away from the panel, or you just didn't want to be around 2 years in a row, kind of injured?
Yeah, I suppose I probably just needed to. For myself, more than anything, really, I just had to be a little bit selfish about last year and just, completely focus on my rehab. And it is, anyone that you talk to about the ACL, you kind of get one opportunity to get it right. And the rehab program is pretty intense. Like you're at it every day. I suppose for myself, I was kept busy with work, and I wanted to kind of just make sure that between mornings and evenings I had it free for myself to control my own rehab program. So I suppose I completely stepped away from Waterford and from Ballygunner for the initial periods of this year, and I think it probably paid off in the end, because I'm happy with the position I'm in right now.
Right. Okay. So you kind of do your recovery on your own time rather than having to go to training, to meet up to do it that way.
Yeah. Like I suppose it's kind of, fortunately enough, Philip and I, we put a gym into the house there last March, just before the lockdown came in, and so I suppose I had everything kind of, I suppose with ease to kind of do the rehab, so it kind of just made sense then to do it at home, and because I could juggle around with work and things like that, so it was what suited best.
So, come here, you kept Liam Cahill, which I'm sure you're all delighted about. What was the players' WhatsApp group like in around the time when he was potentially talking to Tipperary?
Yeah, sure. Like I suppose everyone was kind of in the middle of the kind of club championship, preparing for the club championship at the time. So it was kind of, yourself, obviously, when you're involved in the inter-county setup, it's kind of like for 7 or 8 months of the year, you're kind of like, you're talking daily, and you're basically living with each other for that period, and then all of a sudden you go back to the clubs, and you kind of distance a little bit.
Yeah.
But I suppose during that kind of period, everyone was kind of onto each other, hoping will he stay, and what are they hearing, kind of nearly more than anything, and I suppose just a kind of a bit of relief there as well when he did stay on, because it's obviously there's huge work on in the last 2 years, so. And obviously the players are kind of eager to drive on from that, so we're delighted that Liam is staying on.
Yeah, and I suppose his reasons for staying on, he pointed out that his reasons for staying on is his loyalty to you players. Like, I'm sure you'll run through a wall for him next year that he's turned down his own county because he's created this bond, with you guys, and speaks so highly of you.
Yeah, no, it definitely was a real statement from Liam, and I suppose a confidence booster for the players if they ever needed one, really, that that Liam has full faith in the squad that's there, and I suppose it's really back to the players now to kind of to pay him back, I suppose, and in terms of just the application when it comes to when the panel does regroup, and just making sure that you're giving all to make sure that we can drive on from 2021.
Yeah, definitely, because most people would agree you're the second. You've gone from probably when you lost the All-Ireland final to Galway, you went through a few poor years then, and he came in, and the transformation has been incredible. Like, most people would have you second to Limerick in the country on the form of since he's taken over.
Yeah, look, every year is different, and I suppose when you are at the kind of the top table there, competing with the likes of Limerick and Cork and Galway and Kilkenny, Tipperary, I suppose every year then kind of now teams are going to be analysing Waterford in a lot more detail, like they will be with Limerick. So I suppose really Waterford are really back in the pack now at the moment, and if we think that we've a right to be up there with Limerick every year, well, I think very quickly we'll be brought back down a peg or two. So it's really just getting that foundations right now, and getting that pre-season work in, and just making sure that the team is equipped as best as possible for the National League, and then bringing in the Championship.
Yeah, exactly. Finally, before I let you go, I think it was Quealy, the manager, the Rathmore or the Roan Moore manager. He was talking about you being All Ireland, All Ireland champions in the making. Now I know you're not going to say something like that because that would be a bit stupid on your point of view. But I presume at the start of the year for Ballygunner now, you won a Munster, you almost beat Ballyhale Shamrocks, and then you lost the Munster final. It was in a terrible day, and then COVID hit. I presume at the start of the year, you want that All Ireland title without getting, I'm not looking for you to get ahead of yourself, but I'm sure that that's something burning at you guys now.
Yeah, it is. I suppose. Look, every team that has aspirations of going to the whole way, and we're no different to that. But I think the reason why we've been pretty much successful in Waterford is that we really are. We do take every game as it comes, and I know it's easy to say that here now, and it's I suppose sitting on the fence a little bit with that answer, but it is the reality of it with Ballygunner, and I think that's why we complacency is one thing that we kind of pride ourselves on, in that we don't let it seep into the setup, and no matter who we're playing, what stage it is at, we're making sure that we're at the pitch and where we need to be in terms of our preparations and performances. So obviously now the next step for us is to focus in on the next 7 or 8 weeks and to get ready for the Clare champions and in the quarterfinal of the Munster Championship, and hopefully we can progress further than that, and that's ultimately will be the goal.
Yeah, well, I'm sure you will. You'll be right in the mix anyways. Come here, Pauric, I won't keep you any longer. Thanks very much for taking the call. Good to see you back on the field, winning again.
Cheers, Colin. Thank you.
Great stuff from Pauric there. Right, we'll leave it there. That's all we've time for today. We'll be back on Thursday. Brian McAvoy is going to be on Thursday to talk about championship structures. So I'll be able to have a bit of an argument with him. So we'll talk to you all then. Good luck.